This project constitutes developing a large musical instrument in the woods, where the trees themselves become sounding bodies, all within an augmented reality experience. So first talk about experiential goals. So the first is a sensation of embodiment suspended within an instrument. The second is a sensation of musical collaboration as a listener navigates through and interacts with the instrument. As a composition, the work is a long-form, continuous sinusoidal-based composition where listeners are invited to walk around for endless combinations of drone, small detail sounds, and live playback of recordings from the phone's microphone itself. So each tree in the exhibition area, which are represented in the data space as a GPS coordinate, synthesize a sustained note. Notes are pseudo-randomly assigned when the tree enters a fixed distance from the listener. So as you approach the tree, it comes to life. Notes are parameterized by tree size and possibly tree type, so the species of tree, and an on-set detection functionality with the phone's microphone will trigger playback of a mixture of both pre-recorded and live recorded sounds that emanate from the trees. And specifically regarding the live recorded sounds, a means to express the way that the trees reflect our presence within the woods, as we are inextricably linked and their existential reality is our own. Onset detection also triggers modulation within the sound field itself. If you can think of all the trees being synthesized bodies, onset detection will kind of modulate the synthesis parameterization. I'm going to be focusing on a tuning system that was originating from Lamont Young in 1964. It's Lamont Young's well-tuned piano, and I'll be using the magic chord upper D subset. So for the aesthetic considerations for the work, the sound experience is audio reactive. That's a very important dimension. So an intuitive sonic result responds to the sounds a listener creates or sounds that emanate from within the natural space around them. And the streaming data that will be fed into the system from the data collection points, as we're exploring in this project, are going to be used as global synthesis modulators that further anchor the work within the Alice Holt forest. So this representing the state of the forest at the time. So the morning should sound different than the midday, than the evening. Seasonal shifts would also have an inherent effect on the state of the composition reflecting the state of the forest. That type of dimension that gives a sense of connection to the forest and not just a superposition of another system. And the overarching theme of the work is to shift away from the teleological perception of the forest. So thinking of it as a carbon filter to serve the purpose of saving us from global warming, as a wood source, as a fuel source, or as a necessary counterpoint to the so-called unnatural world that we create as humans. And I want to shift perception to nature as a self-sufficient and independent system, complex and wonderful, and it exists with purpose aside from serving our needs. And this is all to develop compassion for the natural environment. Something that I've come across to describe this relationship would be something called disinterested love, wherein we support and nurture something without centering ourselves in the relationship.
Hi, my name's Ed Chivers, and welcome to my presentation for Sensing the Forest. Currently, my project is tentatively titled, or working title is Tree Museum, and it's an investigation into what happens when biodiversity collapses in the natural world. We lose the animals, but also we lose the sounds that they create. So there's a lost soundscape there. It got me thinking, like now we go to theme parks and have a full sensory experience of what life used to be like, sounds and smells and things. Will forests become tree museums? And as Joni Mitchell said, will we be charged $1.50 to see them? Probably a little bit more. My favourite sound in the woods was the woodpecker, and obviously it's relative rarity of the bird's sound, but also the way it activates the acoustics of the woodland, which I want my project to do as well, to explore that. On research, I found that the lesser spotted woodpecker has declined 91% since 1967, since they've been studying it. So it's becoming nearly extinct. It's on the red list. My woodpeckers, my mechanical woodpeckers, are going to be comprised of Arduino controllers with solenoids. Ideally, those solenoids would be tapping real dead wood in the forest, but there is a health and safety reason why we can't do that. So, and probably for weatherproofing, it's going to be placed in these ABS weatherproof housing boxes, which should make it safe and secure. The way it will be laid out, across a path, hopefully, so the audience will walk into it. There'll be 4 woodpeckers placed in trees around, creating an immersive effect. They'll be hidden in the trees, so the audience have to explore with their ears to find the sweet spot. It won't be initially obvious. Those short impulses should activate the forest's natural acoustics, and ideally, because it's on a path, it should be accessible for all members of the audience to get to it. Those final slide were some of those questions and thoughts that I wanted to explore. The idea, is it real? What happens if the woods fall silent? And particularly when we lose a species, we also lose its sounds forever. Exploring that artificial augmentation of the natural sound of the woods.
My ideation process for my piece for Sensing the Forest has centered around my recent interest in natural radio, which are signals that we can receive with human-made, radio devices, but they are, entirely natural, produced by events in our atmosphere, things like lightning striking all over the world and stuff like that. And I've always found these signals really interesting because, to me, they represent an ecosystem of sound and electromagnetism that we possibly are infringing upon with things like cell phone signals and talk radio and GPS signals. And so my plan was to use a tree as sort of a case study for these things, to wrap a long flexible antenna around it, sort of like a vine, and see what we could receive. Also to point these receiving coils at it at various angles. And it was confirmed for me that this could work through my recent discovery of the work of Owen Chapman, who has a work called Tree Tapping for VLF. And he was able to receive natural radio through a tree, and I believe I can too. And so I think my interest in this is threefold. So the first, we're receiving natural radio, but what else are we receiving? Like what's flowing through the tree? And if the tree can be used as an antenna, it means that we're filling the tree with all of these signals, and that also means the tree is emitting these signals back into the forest. So, I'm hoping to question like what kind of processes and communications could we be interrupting? And the second thing is maybe we're not interrupting anything, and maybe it doesn't matter. But I think the point is that maybe we don't know. As I think in this work and in a lot of my work, I try to make an understanding that we don't understand, and how that's okay to not understand, but like the implications of not understanding, like that, how we should be treading a little bit lighter with these ecosystems, with implications that we may not be able to detect or that we wouldn't even think to be there. And the third interest is thinking about what kinds of things we can harvest from nature without changing it. So in a way, by doing this, I'm sort of like harvesting aesthetic material, sonic material from the forest without changing it. And I like to think about like what kind of processes this sonic energy could drive, sort of like a free energy route, but maybe not that intense. My plan with these coils is they have some acrylic on them, and I have these plates that I've sort of imprinted these patterns on through magnetizing them over and over, and I'm hoping to make some similar imprints that may represent what the tree could be doing to the coils as its signals are being received.
Hello. I'm in Cobbs Creek, which is a little green patch on the very west part of Philly, right next to my house. And my intentions for this project are to create a magical, unexpected musical experience in the forest that invites you to think about our place as a part of nature, about the technology as a way to integrate us into our ecosystem, and to think about the invisible threads that tie us to everything else. And so imagine you're walking through the forest with some friends, and then oh, what's that? What's that over there? Whoa, check out that huge mushroom. And what is that? So then you would wave your hands and some magic would happen. There's no battery power right now, so it's not doing anything. Just to get an idea of the aesthetics, I love the kind of idea of rough technology just straight into the tree, integration of greenery and copper and wire. I would love to have multiple stations that are connected by some way. Maybe there's something over here that does a different thing, but they're all coordinated together, and so that there's connection between people, there's interactivity. So I'll talk a little bit more about what's going on right now. So as for the musical interaction, I can just give you a quick idea of where I'm at currently, and not connecting them to the copper yet because I'm having some calibration issues, but basically each of these wires is one kind of sample, and I've been just on free sound looking at, to start with twig snaps. I don't think that's where I'll land, but just to get an idea of where that's at, I'm going to turn it on and it's going to go a little wild. But basically the idea is each connection will be one sound, one percussion sound, and as you get closer to one or the other, it plays more of that one. And right now the values and the sensing is just not calibrated very well at all, but that's kind of the idea to start with. And then maybe there'll be another station for dealing with like more harmonic stuff, and so that's where it's at right now. Not super exciting, but to start.
My name is Gabrielle Cerberville. I'm a creative alchemist and foraging educator, and my piece is entitled Tread Lightly. When I was in my early 20s, I visited a botanical garden, and in that botanical garden was a really beautiful meditation labyrinth. It was built right into the landscape and used rocks and vegetation to delineate different areas. The labyrinth left a very large impression on me, specifically in how my body and person impressed itself into the landscape. I became aware of how my presence had impact and meaning, and how every step I took either supported or disturbed the peace of this place. For my project with the Sensing the Forest Summer School, I decided to create my own version of a labyrinth. This labyrinth is fitted with sensors that are triggered by different types of movement, both by the pressure and velocity of one's feet as you walk through the labyrinth, and also by the speed with which one approaches certain arrival points. The floor of the labyrinth will be fitted with piezos attached to steel shims, where foot traffic will act as sensor triggers, creating a soundscape unique to each person who walks it. The shims will be buried under an inch or so of organic matter to conceal their positions from the walker. A secondary audio trigger involves the use of ultrasonic distance sensors. These sensors will be hidden in birdhouses and placed at certain points of arrival around the labyrinth. When a walker approaches these sensors, they will start to scrub through pre-selected audio samples. These sensors will rely on the user's approach to determine both the pitch and the speed of the samples. A third audio response, which is not affected by user interaction, is that of the earth itself. I'll be using a device that translates organic galvanic response into MIDI, which is then directed through a synthesizer to create a constant sound source. This will occur in the center of the labyrinth as a focal point. I've built a series of pure data patches to be used within the Bella environment for this work. The phrase tread lightly refers to being cautious, taking care, thinking before acting. And the labyrinth is designed to make humans more aware of how we move through the environment by sonifying our choices. As a forager and someone who considers themselves a caretaker of the natural world, this is something that's very important to me personally. Every step that I take in a forest environment has to be meaningful, and I have to take great care not to tread recklessly on fragile habitat. When we consider the impacts of this topic as it relates to climate change, it's very easy for us to believe that our individual choices aren't very impactful. It is my hope that Tread Lightly will challenge that misconception and engage visitors in a transformative experience.
Hi, I'd like to present my proposal, Remembering the Mighty Oak. Before its fall to disease in the 1970s, the elm tree was an integral part of the British landscape. It's an older generation who can recall its familiar presence, ragged silhouettes that defined fields and skyline, a landscape I have never known except in photographs. Today we are confronted with the loss of the ash tree as ash dieback sweeps the land, telltale signs ubiquitous and foreboding. In her 2015 essay, Dead Forests and Living Memories, author Helen MacDonald faces the prevalence of ash dieback disease by looking back to the fateful elms. She imagines the landscape without ash trees, experiencing a painful anticipatory solastalgia, emotional distress for an environmental change yet to happen. Current research shows that the UK's native oaks are now succumbing to a swathe of pests and pathogens, their vulnerability amplified by climate extremes. Are we ready to conceive a landscape without Britain's best-loved tree? Remembering the Mighty Oak proposes a future where Britain's most emblematic tree, the oak, is no longer present, where we only have memories, souvenirs and relics to remember it. I will create a reliquary for the oak tree, a cabinet-like structure containing illustrated snapshots of some famous oak trees, conjuring British history and cultural traditions. This sculptural object will be built of oak ply mounted on an oak slab on a table-like plinth. It will be colourfully decorated and varnished, with jewel-like motifs of oak leaves, acorns and branches. Beside the title scroll will feature the 3 leaves of elm, ash, oak, our lost trees, past, present and future. Relics might include Kett's Oak, Norfolk, where in 1549 Robert Kett led an uprising against the enclosure of common lands. Oak Apple Day, a tradition that has mostly died out but is still celebrated in Great Wishford, Wiltshire, where the villagers honour their ancient right to collect firewood and graze their pigs in Grovelly Forest. Around the edges of the reliquary, text notes will expand a little on the labels. I'll also present key research findings in a clear, concise way to add context. The research I draw on is widely known but stems from outside Alice Holt. If possible, within the sculpture I will present some data from Alice Holt Research Forest, supporting the proposition that it is climatic extremes making the trees weaker and more susceptible to threats. As you can see, I've moved away from my earlier plan to use augmented reality. I'd really like the work to be accessible for all, regardless of devices and mobile signal, and to avoid a technological glitch impairing someone's experience of being in the forest. However, I am conscious that my project does not employ digital technology, nor intersect with the Data Research Centre. I will keep looking for ways to embrace this aspect as my understanding grows.
What is a forest, and what does it mean to sense one? Merriam-Webster defines a forest as the dense growth of trees and underbrush covering a large tract. The tree, then, is the centerpiece of the forest. It is its land, its property, where it rules in dominion. Sensing a thing pertains as much to sensing what it is as to what it is not. A forest is a community of trees and their kinships. It is imagined as the opposite of a city, which is the community of people and their kinships. When a human senses a tree, however they define the act, they are forming a body-to-body relation that surpasses these definitions. As we sense a tree, the city turns into our forest, and the forest becomes our city. It offers us a chance for dreaming, for imagining life as an alternative, even if it only lasts for a minute. As Cosimo, the hero of Italo Calvino's Baron in the Trees, said, "To live among the leaves is to live among dreams." To sense a forest, then, is to imagine a dream. The tree is a path at the center of the world. It connects the territory of earth, where life flourishes, to the skies and heavens. By taking a sensory walk along the tree, the mind deterritorializes itself from the real to the imaginary. For my narrative, I have devised 4 listening stations. In the first 3, we will listen to 3 areas of the forest soundscape. In the 4th, these sounds are mixed in with an urban soundscape into a human tree composition.
Imagine walking through a forest where every step you take resonates with the sounds of nature. Each movement paints a visual masterpiece on a canvas of leaves. Welcome to Leaves Echo, a sensory journey where art meets environmental consciousness. My name is Qianyi Rose, and I invite you to immerse yourself in an installation where modern technology and ancient natural wisdom converge. Here, each interaction is a verse in the ongoing poem of our planet's health. At the heart of Leaves Echo is a sonification system that transforms carbon dioxide data into a living symphony. These are not just notes, but echoes of the forest breath, modulated by every essence of the air around us. Accompanying this auditory experience is a live visualization projected onto a canvas made from the forest itself. Each leaf a screen, each shadow a story. Driven by the interactions of visitors within the space, the visuals and the sounds both evolve to be more distorted, reflecting how our movement paint new strokes onto the canvas. Leaves Echo is a testament to the balance of our ecosystem. It challenges us to perceive the unseen, to hear the unspoken, and to understand the delicate interplay between our actions and the natural world. This installation is an invitation to engage, to reflect, and to resonate at a higher frequency of environmental consciousness. Step into Leaves Echo, where each step affects not just the art, but the very future of our forests. Thank you for your attention.